Hello guys, today I wanted to make this video to give a couple of suggestions about Throne of Liberty that I feel they might be useful and actually helpful for the game and in general for the healthy community of the game as well. So before everything, of course, I want to say I think some people are just going really hard on criticizing the developers or the publishers, and it's really easy to just say that they're greedy and so on. But generally speaking, we have to understand that this is still a free-to-play game, so it can never be non-pay to win, right? So with that being said, if you compare this game to a lot of other games that are in the same spectrum, you see much worse practices. Both the publishers and the developers are actually listening to the player base a lot. So I want to acknowledge this before I get into the suggestions. If you notice, whenever we have some sort of issue or we have a decent suggestion that actually makes sense, they actually do make it happen, and in a very short period of time, which for most other companies it's not the case. Usually we have to wait months, if not years, for something to happen, for some big change. So keep that in mind before you criticize the studio and generally the publisher as well. They're listening to the people as long as the suggestions are genuine and they actually make sense. And given that they still need to make money somehow. Now, I do stand behind my words from a couple of weeks ago when I made the video about the Action House. I still believe that this can destroy the game. Of course, they could make some sort of adjustments that could make it fair enough for everybody, including pay-to-win players and free-to-play players, having a balance between the two actions, so to speak. And so with that being said, I'm just going to jump into the suggestions. They're not in any specific order. I'm just talking them out of my head, like what I think it could be improved and could be very good for the game. And I believe that if some of the developers or some of the publishers actually watch this video, they may consider some of those things being pretty useful. I don't say it just because it's my words. It's something that I'm talking about. A lot of those things have been said by other people as well. As I was playing the game and I was like talking with others, discussing the things about the game. So let's just get to it. So one of the first things I want to say, it's actually right here in the skill setup. This new thing that came out from one of the recent updates, combat settings, right? We have like 6 presets. That's pretty decent, pretty generous, to be honest. I'm using 4 because I have so many different things, but you wouldn't really use that many all the time, to be honest. So that's pretty good on its own. And you can have a lot of things just being set, and just with one click you just change a whole bunch of things all at once. Like you got the equipment and stats preset that you can change, combined with the skill presets, the skills you got, the guardian as well, and also a couple of settings that are from the menu, from the options. Some of them actually affect your performance as well, your how your computer behaves. So that's really decent on its own. So as you can see, they actually listen to people, and that's really awesome that they have that, because you'll be playing around PvE and PvP very often, and you'll be swapping these very often. So that's really awesome. However, there is one small issue that I believe that they're probably already working on, but they still don't have it. And I believe that it makes sense for them to actually change it. It's right here in the skill setup. So you can change all the skills and all the specs as well. However, one thing stays, and those are the weapon masteries, right? As of right now, when you click on one of the weapon masteries, you can just set up anything you want, right? And it stays like that. If you change your setup, this remains the same. You cannot change it again for the other setup. Now, you could manually do it every single time, but one, it actually costs money to reset them. Like if you just click on this one, it says it costs 10,000 Sollant just for this one. And if you go all the way to here, that'll be all of them online. It's go all the way back. So it's going to remove all the others. And I think all of them cost 60,000. So it's like 10,000 each. And one thing is that this is going to become very expensive as you get you got 20 masteries once you max it out. That means every time you want to swap, of course, you don't have to change all the things, but it's going to cost at least 1 row probably. So it could be like 100,000 Sollants every single time. And you could do this like a couple of times per day because you might be going through different scenarios, right? So for instance, this is for the sword. The boss line here is pretty decent for PvE, for tanking, but it's actually not as good for PvP, as you can see. Now you would probably want to get these things. Changing all that every single time, this could cost you a few 100,000 Sollant a couple of times per day, which is ridiculous right now. And not only that, but even if they reduce the cost, it's still pretty annoying to do this every single time, right? Even if it's for free. So obviously it would be probably very good at some point if they just reward the whole mastery, so that you're able to just change them for free on every setup, or at least let's say you pay a price just once up front, let's say for a different setup, and then just keep it like that, because it would be really annoying to actually pay some sort of price every single time, and then a lot of people might be really upset that they already spent some money on respecing, and they might ask for some sort of compensation for that. But given that, it is, to my understanding, it's going to be crucial for them to change that. So I really hope that eventually at some point they listen to not only me, but a lot of people have been asking for this change. And at some point, we're going to get this weapon mastery added into the combat settings presets, so you can just change it as you go. So the second thing is actually somewhat connected to that, because we're talking about PvP as well. And you go in the arena right now, you got the standard situation here where if you win, you got weekly objectives, you get some points, that's arena coins, you can buy things, which is great, right? You also have ranked matchmaking, like you have ranked score as well, right here. Generally speaking, not even in rank, but of course you get these points as you play, and it's really awesome. But most games have a separate system. One is ranking, where you get like extra rewards for actually being ranked and your high rank. And then it's the regular one, which just for right now you have for victories, you get our regular stuff. Even if you're not ranked, you get regular stuff. But that only works if you actually win, right? In a lot of games, you do obtain some sort of rewards even if you lose, right? So most of the time, the ratio is 1 to 3. So let's assume you get 10 points of something. Let's say you have like a some sort of like point system. You get 10 points for each win, but for a loss, you get 3 points. So you still get something, but it's just way less. I've heard that in Korean games, they never have anything like that. So you either win and you get something, or you lose and you get nothing, right? I understand that. But at this point, it has a very low incentive to anybody even trying to do PvP if they're not going specifically to focus for PvP. And right, the game has heavy emphasis on both PvE and PvP, but for the longest period of time, you'll be doing a lot of PvE. So most likely you want to focus on PvE build. And since the game is already grinding, it's going to be really difficult to get to a point when you have two completely separate builds, one for PvE and one for PvP, which means that for a very long time, you're not even going to have that incentive of actually doing PvP, since you know that your odds of winning are very low because your build is not designed for PvP. And you do have these weekly things, but for most of the players that do PvE, this will never be included in their checklist, because they don't have any participation reward, right? So if you have just a PvE build and you want to do PvP, obviously you're not going to win as much, you'll be losing. And so if right now you don't get anything for losing, you're just wasting your time. And you have no idea how much would that be. In most games, you do have participation reward where, yes, it will be slower and you'll be losing as well. But at some point you'll get some rewards, which kind of like compensate for your time. And this is not a real life thing where obviously if you lose, you lose. This is a video game. I think people should be encouraged to actually at least try. And a participation reward is not exactly a bad thing. Like I said, 1 to 3 ratio is fair enough. If you're winning, 3 games of winning is equal to 9 losses, generally speaking. So 1 to 3 ratio, like I said, which is a huge difference, but at least you get something, right? So that was the second suggestion. I know some people may not like it, and it sounds a bit casual, but honestly, most people are free to play and they don't have the time to actually focus on 2 completely separate builds, because the game does take a lot of time to actually make a full build. It takes or either a lot of money. So if you're free to play, obviously it's not happening that much for you. Another thing that's actually related again to PvP is, for instance, when you go here, you have these options here, right? So you have this option here that says reveal weapon details, right? What that means is when you click on somebody, right, don't have anybody in here, but if you just go, you don't have to go in a city right now. Just click on the rankings here, for instance, and check one of these guys, right? You want to see how they're doing and what they get. Right now, the only thing you can check is their weapon setup, right? That doesn't exactly give you a lot of information. And I understand some people actually hide that, so you're not even able to see that. I understand that this is to help fight against elitism, which in this game, actually, it suffers a lot from elitism. And there are already a lot of people who are just min-maxing, and they're just very toxic against new players. They expect them to have pretty much done everything, even though the game is 2 months old at this point, but they expect these people to have actually learned everything up front. I've met a person that actually was pretty bad against somebody else who was like a new player joining a dungeon, and they expected, because the game is 2 months old, that every single person that plays the game has been playing it for 2 months, which on its own by definition is a pretty bad mindset, because if you don't expect to have new players, then the game is already dying. If it doesn't have growth, it's already in steady decline. That's what it means. So actually having new players is pretty good for the game and pretty healthy, and these people don't seem to realize that. They just trash talk and so on. But anyway, with that being said, having the actual option to show the full gear is pretty decent and helpful. Of course, the communities create a lot of issues, and they also solve issues as well. But why do we need a full inspection, right? Full gear inspection. So right now you see only the weapons, right? This is mostly going to be helpful for tanks and healers in both PvE and PvP, because it allows you to actually have some assessment of your teammates and understand what kind of build they're running, instead of actually hoping that they'll tell you, or even it's just going to take more time anyway. Even if they're saying exactly what they have, it's just going to be a lot of extra work that's unnecessary. And why do you want to see what they have? Is because whenever you have some critical situations in both PvE and PvP, you actually have a brief time to understand. And of course, you say, hey, they just don't have skill, they just don't have gear. If you actually see what they have, then you can have a decent understanding of what they're running, and you can actually give them advice if needed, or just for yourself, if you're a tank or a healer, you could prioritize them, protecting them in certain situations, since you already know what they have. So it's not just elitism, it's really helping everybody to understand and help each other in general. And again, they could just leave it the same way. You can review it if you want, or hide it if you want, the same way as the weapons, right? For the specific situation. It's a decent thing they can do, and it's pretty simple in my opinion. The next thing I want to talk about is your daily limit of contracts. So go on here, check it out. You actually have, for resistance contracts, you can see you can only accept 5. That's the maximum limit is 60, but the daily limit that you obtain by default, like just generate every day, is just 10 contract rights. To make it more like people to be more active, in my mind, they should increase the daily limit to 20 instead of 10. You do 10 in about just 2 runs to the main base. Whatever you take contracts, you get 5 per hit once. So 10 is just 2 runs. That's about 15, maximum 20 minutes, depending on what you get. It's relatively short. And people have been asking to do more content, have access to more content. You only have 10. If they go to 20 and keep the same limit to 60, maximum limit, then people would have to at least do them once every 3 days if they're stacking, which most people would just be doing them every day anyway. However, I understand that to some degree they're actually trying to do it the other way, because they increased the maximum Abyssal contract token limits to 40,000 instead of 20,000 without adding any more sources of obtaining the tokens, which means in reality they just make the game even more casual friendly, that you can just basically stack them up for a whole week or something and then just go all at once. I understand you can just pretty much burn 20-30k tokens in 1 or 2 hours, so it's really not that much of a grind, but I think that they should add more ways to generally obtain Abyssal tokens, which is actually both of these things are related. Increase the daily limit for resistant contracts, and also give more sources where you can obtain Abyssal contract tokens. Right now, you can't really see here. You get them from resistance contracts, you get them from both of the dungeons, tier 1 and tier 2 dungeons, and they also have limits on their own, so I really can't farm that. To what I've seen, roughly you can have about 6, maximum 7,000 Abyssal tokens per day, depending on like what you got. Mostly it's going to be around this range. That includes the Mystic Keys, and if you're lucky with Mystic Portal as well, all the dungeons, and just the resistance contracts. They should just add a couple more ways to obtain Abyssal tokens, so you can play a bit more. Another thing that they could add, since we already have increased drop rates and source of you to obtain runes. Up until now, the only way to get runes, the most reliable way to get runes was trials, but trials seems to be like absolute hardcore end game. So a lot of people don't have any access to runes except if they're doing trials, and trials, a lot of people been doing it. They just farm tier 1, so they're not gonna climb up the rank. As you see, I'm not climbing up as well, because the difficulty increases dramatically. It's not only the attack power and HP that's increasing, they add shitloads of mechanics. A lot of the people's top ranks, if you just check it out, I think here, you see the top players are pay-to-win players, right? They have maxed out absolutely everything. And those are the highest ranks they have right now. So the number one guy has 25 on Void Waste, and all the others are below 20. And the maximum is 30. And as you keep going down, you see most people can't even reach 20. So the highest one, they're roughly, the average is like 15, depending on the trial itself, the dungeon. And you keep going down all the way to the lowest one, it's top 200. They have about 23,000 points based on achievements. And the only one that's high enough is 16 of this guy. All the others are super low level, which kind of suggests that the general progress of the game is not ready to actually tackle this to the fullest. Even just the combat power requirement on its own is 4,500 just to enter tier 30. That's the minimum, right? And as you already know, getting to the minimum for any of these dungeons it's pretty much pain in the ass anyway. So with that being said, they already added more ways to obtain those. Not only that you get them from, you check here, you can actually see. So from regular dynamic events, you get, I think it's just one. From the bosses, but it doesn't actually say, it's more than one. So you get multiple of these runes for any kind of event. And now you also get them from Abyssal dungeons, which is great. You get a bunch of them. However, if you noticed, you have, just click on this one. You have chaos runes, right? Obviously I have nothing. And you can check this synergy. It's the highest one you can get. It gives you more stats of everything. From what I see right now, they added the way to obtain chaos runes from trials. They said that they added from tier 5 and above. Right, there it is. So you have chaos selection chests, rare chaos selection chests. If you get 3 of them on one setup, you get the maximum synergy benefit. What are the drop rates? If you can see, so those are regular ones. You have different groups, right? And then this one, 8.5% chance to get the chaos rune selection chest. If we increase it, I don't know if this increases as chance. Let's say in tier 15, see the chance. It's still 8.5. So it really doesn't change much. You get higher quantities. What I'm saying is they could add it to just one more thing that's also relatively rare. Those are the mystic portals, right? So when you use mystic key to open a mystic globe, there is a chance you open a mystic portal around you. And it's usually in some higher area that you can find. And they give you 5 times the abyssal tokens. Plus they have chance to give you extraction stones, conversion stones, and unlock stones, trait unlock stones. So those are all relatively rare things and decent and useful. They could just add in this item loot table chance to get a chaos rune as well. It's a small suggestion, but it could help people get up a bit faster as well. I don't know if this is really a priority, but I'm just saying it cannot hurt, right? So another thing that I want to suggest is, from what I see, you have way too many ways to spend your Sollant. Like, they add more systems that actually are super greedy in terms of Sollant. So they added the runes. You can actually convert them right here. This costs a little bit of Sollant. It's not a big deal, but as you convert runes, you're also going to get rune fragments. And you can use rune fragments to actually craft specific rune chests. That sounds all great, right? But actually, this is also extremely expensive. It's just another thing on top of you having to spend a lot of money on skill books, and in the beginning especially on growth stones to upgrade your gear, just about anything really, transmutations, dissolving, whatever you can think about, even just regular fucking steroids. I mean, you want to get this 10% damage, but it's so fucking expensive. Everything is expensive. Then you also have your storage, which at, let's say, at 250 plus, you're going to spend more than 4 million per 5 slots, which is almost 1 million per slot of storage space, and that is fucking absurd. Grinding Abyssal dungeon for about, let's say, 20,000 Abyssal tokens. Best case scenario, you're probably gonna get about 10-ish million Sollant, just raw Sollant, and you're gonna get a couple other things that you can sell for Sollant or for Lucent as well. But either way, that's really not that much. You're gonna spend 1 or 2 hours farming, and then you can just waste that on just a couple of upgrades on your skills or your gear, basically, because you need a lot of Sollant per upgrade all the time. So yes, if they can add more ways to obtain Sollant, that would be great. People have been looking for something like that. People have enough time to actually grind more, and that would be helpful a lot. I mean, I understand that there has to be some sort of grind, and you want to keep the players active as well, but you want to be on the line of not completely discouraging them and making them feel like they make close to no progress. And it really takes a long time. I've been playing for around almost 2 months. I got like more than 300 hours in the game. At this point, I'm still struggling. It's not just the materials. Like you can get the materials much faster than you actually get the Sollant, as you can see. I still have a couple of skills that are not maxed out. So that should tell you how grindy it is at this point. And you got so many things. If you want to do multi-setup, like upgrade multiple items to have different build, that's going to make your life even more difficult. Related to this, they could easily increase the drop rates of items and Sollant, the quantity of Sollant from open world mobs. Right now, if you go in any area in the open world, not the actual Abyssal dungeons, but literally just outside, and just, you know, you kill things outside just for regular resistance contracts, or whenever you're just chilling and waiting for something, you can just notice on the side your amount of Sollant that you get is insignificant. It's ridiculously low. You get like, I'd say that's like 50 Sollant per kill or something. So compare that to Abyssal dungeons, you get like 10 to 20,000 Sollant. This is a huge difference. So the outside mobs feel absolutely ridiculous. Even the weapon mastery, that's like another thing. It's super grindy, so they don't give you anything really. You have no incentive to actually just go and do something. I understand they create those systems so that they can limit players of not rushing too fast. So in the end of the day, this is only hurting hardcore players that actually spend over 10 hours per day. Even some casual players do find that at some point they really have nothing to do. So they could increase the quantity and drop rate of open world mobs, and that would help the whole player base to kind of like keep up with the content, because right now the content is kind of like designed for pay to win players that actually go hard on spending money. Because technically you can buy Sollant with real money. I don't know if you haven't noticed, but anytime a pay to win player does need Sollant, they can just simply buy Lucent here. Let's say you get for 100 euro, you get 6,000 Lucent, right? Then go with the 6,000 Lucent. This thing they could do is go in the that's materials category. And the first thing you see is the precious gems right here. So they cost between, depending on different ones. Obviously, this one is the highest value because it's over 400,000 Sollant value, or just below 10 Lucent. So for 6,000 Lucent, you're going to get 600 of these. We can just calculate how much is 600. Just going to check it out here. So roughly, let's just put it down into perspective. 260 million Sollant, roughly. Right now it says that's the sale list. It says 134 sale list. That's not the quantity of the items. Those are the number of sales. Obviously you have much more because some of the sales are more than 10, 20 per single one. Of course, they increase in price a little bit. It's roughly about that much. So you can get, for about 100 euro, you can get like 215 million Sollant. I understand, once again, it's free to play game and they must have some way of making money, but grinding Sollant is really the biggest gate right now for just about everybody. So keep that in mind. Another thing that's actually, it's related to the action house. I did talk about this, and some people again are going to criticize me, but I stand by my words from before. Full Lucent action house is the one thing, the most dangerous thing for the game in the long run. I understand that right now, a lot of the people that started right in the beginning, they're making huge benefit because they were just farming everything, just selling it for inflated prices. And now they're sitting at like thousands and thousands of Lucent easily made in the beginning, and now they can just buy a whole bunch of things way cheaper, like 10 times cheaper than before that, right? So only those people actually benefit from this system. In general, if you just earn Lucent and spend Lucent at the time of doing it at the same time, you lose and gain nothing, because it's going to be more expensive to buy, but it's also going to be more beneficial to sell. At the same time, if you do it now, it's cheaper, but it's also cheaper to buy. However, the people that have started in the beginning, now they have huge advantage over others. But what I was saying, in the long run, a lot of people are actually getting pushed away from the game because they see that there's a full real money action house and you can't actually effectively trade with people using Sollant. Like, this is very unnatural. Not many games have done this. Again, it's a unique approach that gives the opportunity for you to actually make a Lucent without spending money. But again, given this example, Guild Wars 2 has done that in a much more decent way, I would say it. In Guild Wars 2, you can just directly exchange Sollant for Lucent. Well, in Guild Wars 2, it's gold for gems, and vice versa. You can also transfer gems for gold. However, if you keep doing it, obviously you lose on a certain tax rate and so on. But generally speaking, you can do it both ways. And that's much more decent way to do it. Here you just have extra steps. I did mention that. The way to make Lucent here is you cannot just sell directly. Like you can, but it's really rare. You have great success chance, which happens about 20% of the time. You can actually craft something and sell it directly, but most of the time that's not happening. And you have some rare drops that can also have chance to be sellable. Again, that's just extra steps. And the most reliable way for you to make Lucent in the game is by using additional materials. Again, the extra steps. You get an item, instead of selling the item, you convert it into a recipe, which is called lithograph, and then you sell it. And also for traits, which is kind of like the same thing, you just extract part of the item, you sell it so that somebody else can use it to upgrade their item. So my suggestion about this, it's actually not exactly my idea. I had a guildmate that mentioned this. I didn't thought about that. I was just directly going for, hey, remove the real money action house and just change it to in-game currency action house, just like any other game. One of my guildmates suggested a different approach, which is kind of like best of both worlds. I don't know if it's really possible to work out. He just mentioned that they could add a additional action house that is just for Sollant. So you have like 2 action house. The Lucent one remains pretty much the same. Whenever you're lucky, you can just sell it for Lucent. But any other time, you can sell a lot more things on a regular action house that use Sollant. So people could just exchange things for both Lucent and Sollant, depending on their luck as well. And now obviously the second action house that would use only Sollant, I would strongly recommend that people can just sell just about everything there, because in the current one, even given the fact that you can trade a lot of items for Sollant, there are actually not that many. So you can trade lithographs that you actually need to make, so that's an extra step. Materials, the only materials you can trade are basically the rare gems. So you have multiple versions of the gems that are used for the same thing, but only this version can be sold for both Sollant and Lucent. Abyssal aggregate is the other thing. You have these fragments, and that's about it from the materials. You got nothing else here. And you have way more materials than just that. The other thing that you can trade is food, again, based on chance, so not much here. Festival food, again, based on chance. All these items here, accessories, those are the rare drops, the very rare drops that are actually sellable directly on the action house. So that's a rare chance. You got the extracts here, which is just extra steps. Same goes for weapons and armor. So really, there are a whole bunch more items that you cannot sell directly for Lucent. So that is the other suggestion. Just think about the option to make an action house that is only for Sollant, and maybe keep both of them as well. And the last suggestion I would say is, actually it should have been the first one. It's probably one of the most important ones, just quality of life for everybody playing the game. I understand there might be some technical issues or just a bit difficult to make it work, but it's the random disconnection thing. Which there was a high chance that this would happen while I was recording the video. I was lucky enough not to experience that, but actually it does happen a couple of times per day for me and for quite a lot of other players as well, without even doing anything like whatever. It's not AFK, it's not just kicking me out because I'm AFK, it's just random disconnection. Just about all at any given point. Could be super random. Right before a field boss, inside a dungeon, in the city, or literally just in the open world, but it's like, this is the minimum load on the PC right now and on the connection, because around me there is absolutely nothing going on, as you can see. The moment you go somewhere and do something, you may get disconnected. So if they could just work on that as well, I understand that this might be a bit more difficult issue. Pretty much those are my suggestions for this video, and I would say that this is like a suggestion list for 2025. The game's been out for about 2 months now, 2 or 3 months. I'm gonna say it again. I think the developers and the publishers are actually listening to players, and they do decent work with the game. So my message to the community is just be patient, don't be hasty, and try to understand the situation. This is not just some people that have to do everything that you want. You have to understand that this is a business before everything. Given the fact that this is a free-to-play game, anybody could join in, and you have these systems that are at the same time pay to win, but it's very balanced in a way that, sure, you get to the end game a bit slower, but you will get to the end game at some point, in comparison to other pay to win games where it's almost impossible and you restrict it in so much more ways. Just be patient and let's see what happens. I mean, I think that they're doing good work, generally speaking. Also, if you think about being limited in a game, I did said that the game is kind of designed for you to play with one character, because you can just be any kind of class at any given point. You can just change your weapon and just go on. But you do have a second character slot, which you can make, and it's actually not that bad because you can actually share Lucent in there. Also, a couple of other currencies. However, the other things are just per characters. You can literally just double farm every single day because you have an additional character, and the things that just recover daily, you don't even have to farm that much. Like for Abyssal tokens, you have to farm them, but the dungeon tokens, you just generate them every single day by default by just sitting there. And that's easily adding a couple more hours per day for you if you're looking for something. Of course, it's an alt, but you can just use it to make extra lucent and have it on your main character, and then you can actually transfer some of that lucent for Sollant. So you can basically make just about anything because you can farm lucent, and lucent is an enabler for just about everything else. It enables you to get more Sollant and more items from the action house on your main character. If you're thinking about that you don't have much things to do in the game, just make an alt. It doesn't take too much time, and you can add a couple more hours per day to improve your performance on your main character. But that's really just a suggestion to the players that are hardcore and they have a lot of extra time in the game. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. I really appreciate that, and I hope you have a good day, and see you next time.